Puzzles have always been a part of Doom, ever since the 90s. Of course, they aren't the first thing that pops into your mind when you think of Doom, but they are a necessary component of the gameplay. Collecting keys in classic Doom and progressing through these maze-like levels are moments of downtime for the player, and they set up the combat encounters well. Wolfenstein did the whole key collecting idea first, but Doom really made the player interact with the environment more. There are triggers that can be walked over, there are more buttons to press that do different things, secret areas are more diverse, etc. When we get into Doom Eternal, I feel like the puzzle elements are massively underrated, and while they aren't mechanically the strongest part of the game, they are still necessary. The platforming and puzzles kinda fall in the same line, and both are welcomed by me if they are engaging. Doom Eternal is such a trade-off in skill with its combat, so the puzzles need to reflect that, and id Software half did that, I guess? Your skills on the platforming sections can be improved on, and most times you can bypass them entirely with a good meathook swing or a well-timed dash or something. Doom Eternal platforming directly complements the combat, since the skills that you learn while jumping around in levels are applied into combat arenas. I understand that in the early game, players might be a bit turned off by the platforming sections, and I think that's mostly because of the Doom Hunter base. That level is literally half platforming, half combat, and the balance feels a little off. The platforming is fine in that map, don't get me wrong, but it kinda overshines the combat elements and minimizes them by comparison. Levels like Super Gornest or Hell on Earth are more focused on combat than platforming, and I think getting that ratio leaning towards the former is key. Doom Hunter base and even Cultist base have perhaps a bit too much platforming for the player, and that's why they might be a bit turned off. However, that's not to say that the platforming is bad, as I've been a strong defender of it in Doom Eternal. Unlike Doom 2016, the platforming in Doom Eternal helps you become a better player, and I believe the final component of that will be included in the Ancient Gods Part 2 with Meathook platforming. If you didn't know, Meathook sections will be added in the upcoming DLC, and I've broken that down in a previous video, so go check that out if you haven't already. That being said, the platforming is mechanically sound, and in most levels it is implemented well, but you don't want it to overshadow the combat, which it might have for some people in the Doom Hunter base. Also, the way that you have to hit certain switches while you're in midair is another nice touch to these platforming sections. Cultist base has quite a few of these moments, and I think they get players used to shooting while airborne. Although it's not really a puzzle, I did want to shout out the Revenant minigame in Cultist base as well, since it's just a fun little diversion and a great example of engaging the player in new ways. As I've said in past videos, the section where you play as the Revenant is a good method of getting players wanting to play as the demons, so potentially they would be interested in battle mode. Getting back on track, at least Doom Eternal's platforming is a skill-based puzzle that you can get better at when you replay the levels. With the swimming sections in Taras Nabad, on the other hand, that might be the weirdest inclusion out of everything. Now, I like Taras Nabad. I think it's a badass level that introduces the Crucible He-Man style, but I've heard people complain about the water puzzles, and the game director agrees with them.
We add these timing elements because a good traversal puzzle, skill-based traversal puzzle, and those are the ones that age well. They age well because the more times that you play this level, the better you get at performing this, executing, solving this traversal puzzle sequence, and then you start to be able to do it with your eyes closed. So it rewards you for your time investment, and it has a really good replay value to it. It's fun the more times you play it because you get better at it. I think that some of the traversal puzzles that I don't like in Doom Eternal as much are the ones that are kind of, you just have to solve it. Once you get the timing down, there's really nothing to it beyond that. Like in the case of some of the swimming puzzles, for example, which I think are great pace breakers, but there's no real skill involved. It's just basically learning where the buttons are, mastering where the cracks are, and solving those, and then you're kind of finished. Other levels have some more timing based puzzles as well, but some of my favorite traversal puzzles in the game are like in Cultist Base. They're mostly skill-based traversal puzzles. So
I think they are quick and easy to get through, so they aren't much of an issue for me, but I get what everyone is saying. You just slam into a wall to lower the water level, and that doesn't take much skill to do. It's not terrible or anything, but unlike the platforming sections, this doesn't have any skill progression, and that's what people might be unsatisfied about. The water sections in Taras Nabad bring back the radiation suit, and I don't care what anyone says, this was an awesome inclusion to Doom Eternal. I loved seeing it in Super Gore Nest, and I love seeing it in this level, even though the water section itself is not that great. The swimming sections are only one type of puzzle in Taras Nabad, and the rest of them are pretty similar to the early campaign levels. For example, hitting multiple switches within a short space of time is in both Taras Nabad and Cultist Base, among other maps in the game. It's just these brief water puzzles that some fans have an issue with, and for some, even ruin Taras Nabad for them, which I don't understand, but whatever. People have different preferences on this kind of stuff. Hugo Martin has said recently that id Software have just gotten better at making levels from Doom 2016 to Doom Eternal, and leading into the Ancient Gods DLC. I can say that this is true, because the platforming gimmicks and puzzles in the Ancient Gods Part 1 are way more inventive compared to the base game. UAC Atlantica is your first look at the creative level design in the Ancient Gods, with the player having to travel across cruisers and cargo equipment to get to the Seraphim. While the platforming in Doom Eternal doesn't need to be realistic or anything, and it can fall more into abstract territory because it is just a game, I appreciate it when platforming and environmental dangers make sense in the world itself. The little rooms centered on platforming in the Blood Swamps reminds me so much of those Assassin's Creed temples, and I love the way that the camera moves around, showing you the entire space before you can progress. This is pretty awesome in my opinion, and the Blood Swamps is full of engaging environmental and platforming obstacles. A lot of the time, the Blood Swamp swings and hits its mark, but there are moments like the Arachnotron Fog section that goes a bit too far. Regardless, the tree puzzles in the Holt is another solid addition. I don't know about you, but I find it pretty damn satisfying when you knock over a tree in order to use it as a platform. The Ancient Gods DLC, at least from a puzzle standpoint, is better than the base campaign, and I think it's because id Software have gotten better at making Doom games since 2016. I find Hugo's statement to be 100% correct, and I think it shows. Now, whether people are fans of the Spirit, Bloodmaker, and all of the other combat elements introduced in the Ancient Gods is another discussion entirely, but I appreciate all of it. The Ancient Gods DLC is a solid expansion, and it expands on the platforming and puzzle elements of the original game well. Doom Eternal's puzzles are underrated, and I think aside from Doom Hunter Base and possibly Urdak, they are both sprinkled into the experience well. The platforming makes you a better player, at least in theory, and the water and switch puzzles are so few and far between that they don't hinder the experience for me, even though they aren't really skill-based. I'm actually really looking forward to the Meathook platforming mechanics and seeing how they can weave it into the Ancient Gods Part 2. But that's all from me. What do you think about the puzzles in Doom Eternal? Do you think the dislike towards them is valid, or is it kind of overblown? Let me know in the comment section below, as I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching.